rivals go head-to-head this weekend when the Pirates face the Cubs at Wrigley.
Swing and a miss. He struck him out.
The pregame at 3 Eastern, first pitch at 4. Saturday on ESPN Radio and the new ESPN app. ESPN Radio. This is the Thundering Herd podcast.
Oh, you gotta be a sucker to believe this. Manny Pacquiao needs surgery to fix a significant tear in his right shoulder. Yes, now Bob Arum said Pacquiao suffered the injury in training camp 2.5 weeks earlier, and that it clearly hampered him during the fight. Oh, it's interesting. Then how come you didn't sign that piece of paper right before the fight acknowledging you had an injury? I'm not saying he's not hurt, but this is garbage. It's an excuse to explain a boring fight, and now what they're trying to do is make the media and eventually the fans think, oh, so it could have been a much different fight. Boxing is so sketchy, so skeevy. You really going to trust them? Did I or did I not predict that the fight would start 30 to 45 minutes late?
Where Colin was right.
As boxing allowed the pay-per-view buys to stack up, even got Jim Lampley to say there's technical glitches until they slowed down to a trickle, then suddenly, let's get ready to rumble. I told you that would happen. Time Warner said we had a glitch. Yeah, it's called greed. The fight got delayed, as predicted. Well, we had this, Time Warner execs, we had this sort of glitch. Yeah, actually, our show that night, we called a Time Warner executive on the phone to ask him about the glitch. Here's what he told us.
I can't hear you.
There's too much money in my hand.
I can't hear you if you answer it or not.
Yeah, this is boxing. Now Pacquiao was hurt. That explains why the fight was so bad. No, Saturday night explains why boxing's dead. Greed, arrogance, sketchiness, false narratives, and an underwhelming product. Boxing wants to squeeze another fight out of the public, and sadly, they'll get it. They'll get it. Mall Cop got a sequel. Yeah, Mall Cop got a sequel. Those awful John Travolta baby movies, Look Who's Talking 9. You ever watch one of those things? Look Who's Talking. Look Who's Talking 2. Look Who's Talking Now. They added pets. If I'd have been a studio director, I'd have named it Look Who's Still Buying Tickets to This Crap. It's unwatchable. It was horrible. American Pie series, they've made 8 films. Stifler's third cousin is now a primary character. Fast and Furious, there's 7 now. I've seen none. Police Academy, there were 6. 5.5 too many. Hangover was great. The 2 that followed were abysmal. Boxing is trying to gain momentum, and they'll do it first with the media. It's creating a hook. It's a con. The media will fall for it, hopefully pushing for a second fight, and the fans then, who want to see Mall Cop 2, I guess, will get a sequel. None of the people associated with Pacquiao were willing, when they signed the disclosure forms the night up to the fight, never mention this. Now, significant rotator cuff. I'm not saying he's not hurt, but why did you lie about the form? You wanted to get paid. And this, you want to get paid a second time. It's all the seals of fans lining up to pay another $100 for a fight. Ridiculous. Just ridiculous. I mean, but you look around this country, and you look at the movies that get sequels, and don't you just shake your head on stuff? So if those can get sequels, why can't this? $100, 5 guys, pitch in 20. Heard brought to you by Quickie Brand Cleaning Tools. So it's the time of the year that health matters a lot. Because mostly all the teams now in the NBA, they're pretty good teams. I mean, in the East, They're not great teams. Atlanta's not a great team, but Chicago's a really good team. Cleveland, when healthy, is a really good team. Clippers are a really good team. Houston's got a lot of talent. Golden State's really good. So the teams now to get to the second round, with a few Eastern exceptions, they're pretty good basketball teams. But as we said yesterday about LeBron and Cleveland, they better hope for a split at home in the first two. You cannot lose two go-to guys, Love and J.R. Smith. And those are real viable offensive options, especially when LeBron is a passer first. You can't lose guys like that and then have Chicago come into town. Dunleavy played well. Jimmy Butler played well. Derrick Rose couldn't miss. Pau Gasol played well. And Joakim Noah always plays hard. But here's what's interesting. This morning, I'm getting a lot of this. LeBron was terrible. Well, they did ask him to guard Joakim Noah, which he doesn't do and shouldn't. And they do ask him now to hang around the glass, which he doesn't like to do. And he didn't play particularly well. But what's interesting, you know how LeBron was like the king, and then it was Nike's campaign witness? Then the next word was homecoming. Here's the fourth word, burden. LeBron James wasn't terrible. You know who was terrible? Kawhi Leonard at the end of the Clippers series. Where in the last two games he was 8 of 28, no blocks, no steals, and 3 total assists. When the Spurs needed their young star, Kawhi Leonard was awful. Non-story. Last night, LeBron, like he's done several times, lost to a loaded, healthy Chicago team. He's always come back to beat them. And my gut feeling is in 6 or 7, they'll get JR back and probably beat him in about 7 in Cleveland. But that's the burden. Blake Griffin last night was great, but didn't have a field goal in the fourth, but he had rebounds. But if he was LeBron and didn't have a field goal in the fourth, come on, Blake scored all his points in the first 3 quarters. King, witness, homecoming, villain, burden. I'll still take Cleveland in 7, but Chicago's a real team with real players, real depth, a real coach. And Jimmy Butler's become, like Kawhi Leonard in the East, a star. Not a superstar, but Jimmy Butler's a star like Kawhi Leonard is in the West. He's a real big-time player. And now with Derrick Rose healthy and Jimmy Butler, that's a real team.
Want more of the Herd? The Thundering Herd Podcast.
The media has a responsibility not to shovel garbage on the public. And it's nothing against Kevin James, who I think is a really good guy, but that Mall Cop 2, Mall Cop 1 was unwatchable. And I couldn't put him on the show. I always get asked, do you want to put guys on the show? And I'm not going to tell people to watch a movie if it's a bad movie. And Kevin James is a really good guy. And that's nothing against Adam Sandler, but he's now it's a money grab. These are bad movies, and I'm not going to push that stuff. Because in the end, if I say to go buy something, I want to have in my soul a belief that I'm selling you quality or you're not going to buy me. My loyalty is to honesty. It really isn't to anything else. It's not even really to fans. It's not really to ESPN. My loyalty is to honesty. Because once I lose that, I'm done. I could leave ESPN. I can stay here. I've always got me and my honesty. You got to be loyal to the things that matter in life, like my kids, to honesty. And I can't shovel stuff that's garbage. That boxing story with Manny Pacquiao, those guys didn't sign a waiver declaring he was injured, but now want you to believe it would have been a different fight. Don't buy it. It's a con game. Pacquiao is mentally and physically no longer an elite fighter. He's no longer an elite fighter. It's the same thing to some degree with Peyton Manning. And although he's not conning you out of money, but Peyton Manning wants to make more money because Peyton's always loved money. It's very understood behind the scenes. Peyton likes cash. He likes it. He's selling everything. Oreos, mid-size car, Papa John stuff. It matters to him. He's a stacker. He likes that stuff. Well, Peyton Manning has a bad game against Indy, and then, 10 days later there's a story. Well, he was sick, and Peyton Manning is regressing badly. He's not the same quarterback the last 2 years late. Now, he may have been sick and had a quad pull, but if you think Peyton Manning's not regressing, Tom Brady's regressing. He can be great in moments against Seattle in the fourth, but even Tom Brady is regressing. He's not plateauing or improving. He had a great second half against Seattle. But Tom doesn't throw the ball deep as well as he used to. He doesn't. He's worked his tail off, but he's regressing slightly, very slightly. Peyton Manning's not slight. Greg Cosell, in the middle of last year, said this.
His arm there's not a lot there. It can look bad.
Bad? That's in moderate weather. In cold weather, when he loses grip, he can't make an out. I mean, Indianapolis corners are just sitting on him. Well, the quad, stop making excuses. Pacquiao's no longer an elite fighter. Peyton Manning is no longer an elite thrower in this league. Doesn't matter. You think next year he's going to be healthy? He's got 4 neck surgeries. He's 39. It's like Kobe Bryant. When Kobe Bryant comes back, and Kobe's remarkable, he'll get hurt again. Kobe's going to get hurt again. Derek Jeter went to spring training this year, and Derek's just like, remember Derek announced his retirement. It was at spring training. Derek's like, I got to be honest. It's over. And he had a little bit of a money grab. But, I understand the guys at the end, the Bradys, the Mannings, the Favres. It's a little bit of a money grab. Get what you can. I get it. I'm not banging on him for that. I do get it. But the Pacquiao and the Manning thing, it's like those stories get out because somebody wants them out. Just be honest about it. Just be honest about it. Steve Nash, by the way, was honest and people destroyed him. Nash is like, I can't play, but they owe me $10 million and I'm not going to turn the money down. I mean, that's why players lie, and that's why players fib, and that's why players marginalize stories, because Steve Nash is like, hey, it's $9 million. I'm not turning that money down. And fans are like, that is outrageous. And on this show, I said, you want honesty from these guys. When they're honest, you got to quit clobbering them. Steve Nash was totally upfront, totally authentic. Totally authentic. Chris, you're in the herd on ESPN Radio. Chris, go ahead.
Hey, Colin. Thanks for taking my call. Love your show.
Thanks.
Colin, I agree with you about half the time. Here's one time where I agree with you. The reason we're so hard on LeBron James is because everybody keeps saying he's one of the top 10 players all time. Yeah. So you said Kawhi Leonard didn't play well towards the end of his series, but he's not LeBron James. If LeBron James is this great, shouldn't he be able to will this Cleveland team past Chicago?
No, and Chris, that is the myth. That people forget that Michael Jordan had bad series and bad games, but he did not live in a social media context where every jumper was judged. Michael Jordan missed 26 game-winning shots, had opportunities to wrap up series at home several times against Seattle, I remember one, had a bad series against Utah where he was, in several games, awful. But he didn't have to live through the day-to-day, play-to-play, series-to-series social media world. LeBron James had a bad game last night. He was asked to carry his team. Go guard Joakim Noah. LeBron's not a natural 4. He's closer to a 2 than a 4. So they asked him, go guard Joakim Noah. And he's a big dude. He doesn't want to guard guys like that. He wants to guard Jimmy Butler. He can shut down Derrick Rose. That's what he's done before. He's not a guy that's why he loves Kevin Love. Because Kevin Love does all the dirty work. I've been saying this for 2 weeks. LeBron doesn't want to be a 4. He doesn't want to be on the glass. If he guards Joakim Noah, he's got to hang around the glass. He doesn't want to do that anymore. That's why he got frustrated with Miami, because Chris Bosh became a 2. LeBron didn't have a center in Miami, and Bosh became a finesse player, and LeBron got tired of it. I've been saying this for weeks. He doesn't want to be a 4. That's why when he went to Cleveland, he announced how much he wanted to play with Tristan Thompson, a marginal player. That's why he likes Kendrick Perkins. That's why he loves Mozgov. These aren't highly skilled guys. Mozgov's a pretty good player. But they do what he doesn't want to do. It's why a lot of you guys hire a pool guy. You hire a landscaper. Because you make pretty good money, and they do what you don't want to do. LeBron wants to stay off the glass, get the rebound, Mozgov, outlet, boom, I'm off. He don't want to get beat up anymore. And so last night they said, LeBron, go guard Joakim Noah. That's a pain in the arse for LeBron. He wants to guard Jimmy Butler and be out on the wing. So that's just, this is the psychology. Now, by the way, LeBron didn't play particularly well. So what? It doesn't, in the big context of who he is, it doesn't matter. They'll get J.R. Smith back. That's some offensive help. It's not going to be a great series for LeBron if he's got to continually guard Joakim Noah. He doesn't like it. You can tell in his body language. He gets worn out. He gets tired. And I understand that. But again, I've said this about Barack Obama. Whether you like him as our president or not, it's irrelevant. If you look at what he took over, he's the first president of my life that's had to deal with the Facebook, Twitter generation and really had to deal with it. They don't like anybody. It's the tear-down society. They don't like anybody. Barack Obama took over the worst economy since the 30s. Gas prices down, stock market through the roof, housing market stabilized, inflation under control, and now 92% of Americans have health care. Go to Twitter, he's a bum. Listen to talk radio, worst president ever. If Mitt Romney would have taken over with his financial background, we'd be saying, guy's a genius. History will serve LeBron very well. History will serve Obama very well. We're the most insured we've ever been. Poor people now have insurance. Stock market up, housing up, gas down, inflation under control. But Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan didn't have to deal with this play-to-play, moment-to-moment, speech-to-speech vitriol. LeBron James had a bad game. Blake Griffin had a good game. And by the way, LeBron's game wasn't awful. It was not awful. Mark, you're in the herd on ESPN Radio. Go ahead.
Hey, Colin, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah, this is my first time getting through. I'm a former Knicks fan. But look, I'm from that triple-double era, and I love to look for triple-doubles. And I always said the first time LeBron came in the league, he was the closest thing to Oscar Robertson. And I'm going to tell you, I'm watching the game last night, and I'm seeing what he got to deal with, what he's missing. And I look up in the third quarter, he had like 7 and 7 on the assists and rebounds. I looked up at like 3 minutes ago in the game. I don't know if he got the assist, but LeBron was almost close to a triple-double last night.
Yeah.
But people want to just bust this kid like he's God, but they don't understand. He's always going to give you 100%. So don't knock the guy even say he's making jumpers and stuff, but that kid was doing everything he could to win that game without the help he normally had. So people need to just appreciate what we watching every time we see this young man.
Listen, Chicago's a real team with real players, and every guy was hot. Dunleavy, Rose, Butler, Gasol, they were all hot. They were, well, what did they hit on threes last night? Like 8 of 10? 10 of 18? They were every time. At one point, Chicago was better from the outside than the inside. It's the reality of it. Chicago's a really solid team, and they shot the heck out of the basketball. LeBron can't guard 5 guys, and Kyrie's not an elite defender anyway. So, and Chicago's always had LeBron's number first game in the series through the years. He comes back to figure it out. They do need another offensive player. J.R. Smith will be a nice add. Shumpert played well last night. And Kyrie and Shumpert and Mozgov and LeBron. And that against Gasol and Dunleavy and Rose and Butler and Noah, it's going to be a really long, long series. And it'll come down, I think, to a Game 7 in Cleveland. And LeBron, my gut feeling, will probably go LeBron and score 38, and they'll win by 2. But this is, you know, you can't go into a game without Love and J.R. Smith, ask LeBron to go guard a 4 and think, well, what happened last night? Really, it came down to about 3 shots late.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Champ, Finals MVP, Chauncey Billups, one of my favorite guys through the years. You and Shane Battier are 2 guys that coaches often told me that you were the lubricators, not the agitators. And we just talked about that for 10 minutes. We don't have time to talk about it, but I love the fact that you're now into broadcasting. It's where you deserve to be.
Thank you, man.
Handsome, smart dude. Still living in Denver where you were raised.
Yeah.
Good for you. I was saying this to our and people think I'm critical of Michael Jordan. No, I'm just 50. So I lived through Michael Jordan's career. And Michael's the best player I ever saw. But Michael had bad games. You just can't find him on YouTube. And I was saying to you, LeBron last night didn't play. Wasn't that effective? It wasn't. Michael had a lot of those. So you played with against Michael Jordan. Did he ever have a bad game? Talk to my millennial listeners.
Michael had a ton of bad games, man. I mean, he really did. I mean, the thing about it is Michael could go in a game and be 8 for 30 shooting scored 36 points in that game, and people look at it, maybe out of those 8 field goals he made, maybe 2 or 3 were highlights. So people will look at it and say, "Oh my,
he's amazing."
Did you see what he did last night? Well, it was a bad game. He was 8 for 30, and a lot of those bad shots are not just bad shots; they're turnovers.
Now think about that. That's something that never gets brought up. That's a player's perspective.
Sure.
A bad shot is a turnover. Michael threw up a lot of bad shots.
And he did, and he was a volume shooter and scorer, and I agree with you. I think he's the best player that we've ever seen, that I've ever seen. I speak for myself on that. But, yeah, man, he had a ton of bad games.
So LeBron now is being asked to guard Joakim Noah. And he doesn't want to. LeBron wants to get out on that break. He wants to be a wing guy. We've known that since high school. He doesn't want to be on the glass. Do you think this could just be a matchup for him because of Kevin Love's departure? This may not be a great series matchup-wise for LeBron.
Well, for one, I think it's a mistake having him on Joakim Noah. He's your best defender, right? Joakim Noah is not going to score a lot of points. He's your best defender. You put him on Derrick Rose or Jimmy Butler, okay? You put him on one of those guys that are going to make plays on the perimeter, and I think he'd be more effective. You can put a host of guys on Joakim Noah.
Tristan Thompson.
You put Tristan. You can bring in Perkins and put on him. You can play anybody on him. He's not going to be that effective offensively. Now, you got to keep him off the glass, but he's not going to be that effective. I think you're wasting minutes with LeBron James guarding Joakim Noah when you can have him on one of the guys that are making all the plays.
How do you I think it's a long series. It goes back to Cleveland for Game 7. I just think once they get JR back, I said yesterday, just get a split at home if you're Cleveland. Now, I usually say that for the road team.
Right.
But I kind of feel like it's a long series.
I do too. I mean, LeBron, he has to, in my opinion, for them to win this series, he has to average 30 points the rest of the way. He has to attack the basket to score. You don't have those kickouts. You're not kicking out to Kevin Love and JR right now. You're kicking out to Shumpert, who played great yesterday.
He played great yesterday.
Now, if he makes 4 threes, you got to win that game. He's not a shooter. You can't get that from him every night. But you're kicking out to Deladova, you're kicking out to Tristan, you're kicking out to Shumpert. Now, at this point, LeBron James has to go in there, attack the basket to score.
And it's a little tougher now because Love is gone, meaning
Absolutely.
the bigs for Chicago,
they're packing the paint.
I think it's a very difficult – I think it's going to be one of these grueling series.
It's going to be tough.
It's going to be a tough series for these guys. Chauncey Billups joining us, The Herd on ESPN Radio. So Chris Paul doesn't play. They go into Houston and thump them. I thought for Houston – that was a bad loss. Do you think the Rocket players wake up this morning? You've been in these series, and Houston knows we had to win last night.
That's one of the worst losses I've seen in years, man. It really is. I mean, you talk about a team in the Clippers who's coming off of playing a knockdown, drag-out 7-game series, no rest.
And they don't have a bench.
No bench, and your best player is out. The best player's out. Now, Houston, you've been resting 5-6 days. Had a good, easy series. You got everybody healthy. You got a guy who's up for MVP. You got Dwight Howard back. And you're at home.
And you get smoked.
And you're at home, and you lose handily. And there's a thing when another team's best player is out, you tend to let your guard down for a little while. You don't lose the game. Maybe you have a tough quarter, and the coach has to jump into you, and you say, okay, this game means a lot. This is game 1. This is game 1 of this series. We have to turn this thing around, and they could not do it. That's very worrisome if I'm Kevin McHale, and because the longer Chris Paul sits out, the better he gets. He will re-enter. He will enter this series at some point.
If I'm Doc Rivers today, why would I play in game 2?
I'm not playing on game 2.
I got my split.
I'm not playing on game 2. I at least got a split, and if they mess around again, I get 2 games because they can't guard Blake Griffin. Blake Griffin he's facilitating, he's making all the plays. You got Jamal Crawford who turned the ball over trying to pass too much yesterday. You say, Jamal, no, score the ball. Score the ball, and then the pass will open up. Don't come in there looking to pass. Score the basketball. Now, you mess around, you definitely got to sit Chris Paul. Keep letting him, if he's 60% now, maybe he's 70% in 2-3 days from now. Keep stealing days for him. Keep stealing days for him now. But if you're Houston, now when Chris Paul comes back into the series, he doesn't even have to be 100%. He just has to be out there. He just has to facilitate.
We live in a time now, young fans get mad at me. This morning I wake up, my inbox is, I thought you didn't like Blake Griffin. I love Blake Griffin. I've said. I wish he had more go-to offensive moves, which he could rely on late. That's what the great ones had: MJ, Kobe, Duncan, Akeem. He's a mega talent, and you saw it last night. He's a mega talent. But I don't see him as Durant. I don't see him as LeBron quite. How do you view him?
You know what? Blake has made some strides, man. And when I played with him a couple years ago, he was already a very, very good player. I think he's a great player now. He works harder than maybe anybody that I've ever played with.
So practice?
Oh, man, he's in there an hour before anybody gets there. He's already changed shirts. He sweats so much before we even get to the gym. And I'm a guy that likes to get there early. So that lets you know the work that he's put in. And you see it in his game. You see how good he's shooting the ball now. You see the decisions.
He has a mid-range jumper
makes.
now. He didn't.
He really does.
In the first 2 years in the league, he had nothing beyond 8
feet.
He
shot it, but he probably at that point he was open all the time. He didn't realize why he was open. They wanted him to shoot that shot. Now you got to rotate to him, and you got to rotate fast because he can knock that shot down. But more importantly, he's taking on the challenge of leading. He's making some strides, man. And last night I thought, with Chris out on the road, game one of this series,
biggest game of his career,
he validated his stardom, man.
You can literally say last night was the biggest moment in his career.
I agree, because everybody looked at him. He had to lead last night.
That's a great way to put it. He validated his stardom.
He did. He did. I thought he did.
Hey, it's great seeing you in studio. We'll have you back a bunch.
Thank you.
Chauncey Billups. Awesome. Way to schedule that, Vince. Most of my guys back there, they just eat all show. They have no interest. Bring them on tomorrow. I'm all for it. Repeat guest.
You're in the Herd, the Thundering Herd podcast.
There's two stories in life and in sports, and we often try to tell the one, we always do, that's the real story and not what you read. Like the Pacquiao injury, all that is a money grab. That's all that is to create a new narrative that if he'd have been healthy, it would have been a better fight. That's all they're doing there. It's a con job. Mike Huckabee yesterday said, I'm going to run for president. Mike Huckabee knows he's not going to get 18,000 votes. But Mike Huckabee, if he runs for president, can get 3 times as much on his speeches. That's a money grab. That's what got Alan Keyes had no chance to be president. Mike Huckabee has no chance to be president. He's not going to tell you that. But now that he's running for president, if he gives a speech to a corporation, that $15,000 speech becomes a $30,000 speech. That's the story behind the story. Just like with Time Warner Cable, we had a technical issue. We had some glitches. Oh, I'm sure you did. And there were a lot of people ordering a fight. But I've covered boxing for 30 years, and all major fights get pushed back. Why? Because they want to sell as many pay-per-views, impulse buys, as they can. And then when it slows to a trickle and they can monitor it, hey, everybody, let's get ready to rumble. There is always a story behind the story. Similar to information, it only leaks out when people want it out. Peyton Manning's injury. Why did we find out about it? Because he wanted to make sure it got out for his bad game and the fact he wanted to get one more year. And Peyton likes his cash, always has. He's a stockpiler on that stuff. Big mountains of it. Same with Pacquiao. Why does this story get out about surgery? They want it out to create a false narrative that the boxing, the match would have been much. Pacquiao, if not a shot fighter, isn't anywhere close to his prime. He's smaller. He's got no thump. He's not as fast. And frankly, he's taken a beating. He's been in some knockdown, drag-out fights over the last several years. Pacquiao hasn't knocked anybody out in a half-decade. Steph Curry won the MVP yesterday. No problem with it. Great dude. This is what jumped out to me, and this is what often jumps out to me. His dad played in the NBA. But despite that, Steph Curry did not have an easy path. And I write about this in my second book, and I'm guilty of this. As a parent, I want the gain for my kids. I want the good life. But I don't want the pain. I don't want them to cry. So I grapple with this. Parents do this. They go to Little League games. Why don't you play my son? No, don't let him play your son. Let him cry on the way home. It'll make him mad. And if he's truly going to be good in baseball, that will motivate him. Well, what if it turns him off? Then he was never going to be great. It's like the great line in the movie Whiplash. Remember that line?
There are no 2 words in the English language more harmful than good job.
But is there a line? You know, maybe you go too far and you discourage the next Charlie Parker from ever becoming Charlie Parker?
No, man, no. Because the next Charlie Parker would never be discouraged.
If you're going to be Cal Ripken, Michael Jordan, Kobe, don't worry about the tears. You won't be discouraged because the great ones don't take no for an answer. The saying I always say is people who don't take no for an answer rarely get no for an answer. And so kids don't make the team, and they sit, and they cry, and they quit. They would have been quitters anyway in sports. They wouldn't have been great anyway. So yesterday, Steph Curry wins the MVP, and everybody thinks Dad was an NBA player. But the great thing about him, those tears yesterday were Kevin Durant's tears when he won. Those tears are telling you it wasn't easy, and he had doubters. And he tried to go play where his dad played, and they didn't offer him a Scully. And he had to go to Davidson. He wanted to play at Duke. He wanted to go to Virginia Tech. He wanted to go to Kansas. And they said no. And yesterday when he cried, those were tears of the journey, and it wasn't easy.
Pops, you're the example of what a true professional is on and off the court. I remember a lot of your career, and to be able to follow in your footsteps, it means a lot to me.
Trust fund kids don't cry like that. I saw NFL draft picks over the weekend, a lot of them crying. You know why? 12 foster homes. Somebody quit on them. We want the gain. We don't like the pain. We don't like to see our kids cry. That's why Kobe's Kobe. That's why Aaron Rodgers still has a chip on his shoulder. Because Cal was the only big dog to offer him a Scully. Tom Brady's story, which I saw on the NFL Network a couple years ago, Tom Brady told the story of draft day when he fell to the 6th round. He still cried. Brady now is a superstar. He's still got all teared up. It's the pain that creates the gain. Nobody wants it. So Steph Curry and Kevin Durant and all these guys, they're telling you it's not easy. They got rejected over and over. Go look at Durant's life. Look at Steph Curry's life. You think because his dad was an NBA guy. Wasn't easy. But I love these young athletes who go out and they get drafted or they reach stardom, and you can really see the journey in their speeches. It's great. I just sat there and I'm like, his dad was getting all choked up. Steph Curry, who's such a great kid. Such a great kid. He's the number 1 ranked athlete to millennials, according to research. So to 20-year-olds, Steph Curry is their Tom Brady for me. He's the Michael Jordan for 40-year-olds, Steph Curry. I just think it's great. Mike, you're in the herd. Go ahead.
Hey, Colin, how are you?
Good.
Good. There's a theory out there where if you're a big fish in a little pond, you can actually build more confidence.
Yes.
And that does relate a little bit to Steph Curry.
Yep.
Going to Davidson, going to a smaller program, building his confidence could actually have helped him in his career.
Yeah.
Rather than possible discouragement playing possibly in a bigger program.
Yeah, Mike, I believe in that theory, and people talk about that he got turned down, and instead of tearing him down, he went to Davidson, and he was going to prove how good he was, and Davidson allowed him to really flourish. He got more minutes. He was the star. He got more attention. I am a big believer in that. You know, I don't want my kids in a high school with 10,000 kids. You get lost. That's why I think private schools help. It's not the teachers are better. Your kids don't get lost. They get more individual attention. You know, sometimes you go to these big metro areas, your kid's a great kid, they just get lost. I mean, I've seen some of the size of these schools. They're like universities. Nothing against the teachers, the kids, the parents, but they need individual attention. If you can afford it, sometimes some kids need it.
ESPN Radio. With the action on the court, the diamond, or the gridiron.
Comes alive.
The NBA.
The San Antonio Spurs are the world champions.
Major League Baseball.
San Francisco Giants are the champions of the baseball world.
The new college football playoff.
College football playoff national champions, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
You're home for the best in sports play-by-play.
ESPN Radio.
I don't think fans believe this, but I really do have your back. I'm strongly discouraging you from being interested in Mayweather-Pacquiao 2 It's why I wouldn't bring Kevin James on for Mall Cop 2. Other shows did. I refused to do it because it wasn't good enough to have a sequel. And I like Kevin James, but I know you don't think I have your back, but there are times I do. If I promote this Pacquiao-Mayweather fight, I'm telling you, I think it's good enough to be like an advertiser. Like, oh, I should do this product. I'm telling you right now, it will not be a good fight, and this is a con job. It will. Pacquiao, if not a shot fighter, is so far past his prime, he'll never hurt Mayweather, who will dance around him, score with single punches, and it will be Mall Cop 2. It'll be Godfather 2. Godfather 3 was actually pretty good. He is a former NFL player and scout director of personnel in the Eagles and Redskins front offices and was a star on the draft this weekend. Louis Riddick joining me. All right, I talked to Parcells yesterday. How long does it take to evaluate talent? How long does it take to realize after a draft, hey, you're evaluating, some of these guys are good, some aren't?
Yeah, you'd like to say in scouting, you usually say by a player's third year they've declared who they are. That was usually the cutoff that we use. Some players in the first OTA, the first minicamp, you go, exactly. That's exactly what we thought. Some guys you go, I've been in places where you go, oh no.
A guy whiffs early.
Yeah, we messed that up.
Is it heart usually or physical?
Usually you just see that once they get there and you just see them in comparison to everyone. Because, Colin, that's the trick, and that's how college scouts get fooled a lot of times. Is they're not around a lot of pro players all the time unless their GM makes them come to the facility or watch a lot of pro tape. They kind of lose track of what the comparison, the projection is. And then when you get them with your team, especially if you built your team to a certain standard, and you go, this is not adding up. This guy just looks out of place. And sometimes it just happens like that. But generally speaking, 3 years is about the amount of time. Some guys assimilate faster. Some guys it takes a little longer. You want to give yourself about that amount of time. And, again, I was emphasizing this during the draft. It isn't just also on the player. It's on – see, now teams are on the clock again. Now it's about how quickly can you get them to learn your playbook, get them indoctrinated into the ways in which you train, practice, study, meet. How fast can you get these guys? Because those are all the kinds of things that really will speed up a guy's learning curve. And then his off the field. How strong is his family? How much is his family helping him? Does he now have 15 cousins that have come out of the woodwork and his head is spinning now? There's so many hidden things, Colin, that just can really ruin a player.
Louis Riddick joining us, former scout player in the NFL, exec now with ESPN, was tremendous on the draft this weekend in Chicago. Cowboys go with Randy Gregory. Would you have taken him with his baggage?
If I wasn't confident in my program from A to Z, no, I wouldn't have. I would have been scared to death of Randy, and I for some reason feel like I have a personal interest in seeing him do well because I thought he was dynamite on film. I thought the kid had rare ability. He's going to the perfect place with Rod Marinelli. Those kind of relationships, the kind of cachet that Rod Marinelli brings to the table is critical in this kind of situation because if a kid won't buy into him and a kid won't buy into a team like the Dallas Cowboys that is just, I mean, they've kind of opened their arms to him and said, we'll help you. We'll do whatever you need us to do to help you be successful. If you give us your word that you're going to try. And he said that at the draft. He said that that's what Jerry Jones asked him was, give me your word that you're going to do everything you can to be the player you're supposed to be. If he doesn't make it in this situation, it'd be tough to see, well, what better situation could he have gone to as far as a team that's going to put their arms around him and a coach like Rod. I mean, Rod's an icon. An absolute icon. And he brought up I was thinking Simeon Rice. But as soon as I saw the kid, I'm thinking Rod Marinelli, and he brought up the fact.
Tampa Bay great.
That's right. He brought up the fact that Rod Marinelli said the same thing. It could either be that, or it could be
Rolando McClain, where he just doesn't work in
the league.
And
we're talking about it on the show going, there's another one. That's
okay,
right.
There's a great offensive lineman for LSU, Lale Collins, who was a projected first-round guy. He gets involved in something, somebody is murdered. Now, he's not a suspect, but he was taken off the board. Yeah. Now he can be an undrafted free agent and make fourth-round money, perhaps, or kind of mid-range money. Yeah. Rex Ryan's down there in Baton Rouge and says, can I talk to him? I've been critical of Rex Ryan, but I understood taking him off the board because he had an interview with police. But now there's a story saying he's not a suspect. Is Rex Ryan ahead of the curve on here to get a first-round offensive line talent?
Yeah, I mean, he's trying to be proactive in the event that the kid is exonerated and he has had no connection here. Sure, I mean, he's doing the right thing because I mean, that's what the NFL is. It's about trying to build football teams and gather information so you can make a very fully vetted decision.
If you were a GM, would you be comfortable now when the police say he's not a suspect? Would you be comfortable going? Let's go to Baton Rouge.
If he gets fully exonerated and he is no longer connected to this case in any way, shape, or form from an interview standpoint, then they don't want to know anything else from him. Like, hey, you have nothing to do with this. I'm all over it. And they're just trying to get ahead of the curve because right now maybe they're playing the odds that, hey, it's looking like he's really not involved. So they're very smart to do so. Very smart. And you know, this could be something where for Lyle it works out very good for him. Yeah. In the long, not very good, but it works out to where now he can truly, once you get out of it, he can pick his place, the best fit for him, and be picky. You know, it's one of those deals where he's going to sign a 3-year contract, not a 4-year contract, so he's going to start getting into his free agency years quicker. There's a number of different ways he can make it up. It's not ideal, but all is not lost as long as he can get himself disconnected from this.
I would make an argument. 33% of this league is undrafted free agents. I could make an argument. It's better, instead of being drafted in the 6th or 7th round, to be an undrafted free agent.
There's no doubt. And in a league where it's all about fits, who knows better what fits you than you?
That's a great point. It really is.
So, he can take advantage of the situation. He just needs to get himself clear from all this.
All right, the Seahawks draft Frank Clark. There is a domestic violence issue in his past. Seattle says, you know, we did some reporting, we couldn't find it. Story today, it's ugly. Should I buy that? Or do teams sometimes just not look behind certain rocks because they don't want the answer?
You know, I've heard different stories about this issue, and there are scouts who have dug hard on this story. And there are other teams that were okay with the information that they found out, and they felt comfortable with what they found out to where they were looking for the right time to pick him, and that they would have been okay with it. And you know what? I don't know all the information. This would have been one of those cases where it would have been interesting to have been the area scout in the Midwest to have gone to Michigan and really tried to find out exactly what happened here. So, and there's people that I trust who feel as though, hey, it was one of those situations where maybe it's not all that it sounds like. But, you know, in this climate, Colin, obviously everything surrounding that issue is going to be scrutinized and is going to become very explosive, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. And as John Snyder said, I believe, they have a zero-tolerance policy. If you put your hands on a woman and it's been proven that you hit someone, that's it. You're done. We don't consider you. And from what I understand, they're saying they don't believe that's the case, that he put his hands on anyone. So, if that's what their information turns up, then they can make the decision that they want. And again, I have talked to others who say, you know, it's not a great situation, but it's not maybe quite as bad as people make it out to be.
Louis Riddick, congrats on your work on the draft, and you'll be around a lot. We got a lot of questions to ask.
Excellent. Thank you.
ESPN Radio presented by Progressive, creator of the Name Your Price tool, range of coverage options. The Blake Griffin fans crack me up. Colin, what did you think about Blake Griffin last night? I think he's a really good player. First 3 years in the league, he was the best volleyball player. He was the Karch Kiraly of the NBA. He's developed his game slowly. He's a very, very high-end mega talent in the NBA. Not one of my 5 favorites. I'd build the team more on Chris Paul than him, but he's a great talent. But it's like these days, if you don't love a player universally across the board, if you criticize any little niche part of his game, you don't like the player. I've always said Blake Griffin's a remarkable athlete, but his game needed developing. Stanzik's looking at me.
Yeah, you always say this like you would start your team with Chris Paul, but Chris Paul is on his team. So how do you differentiate that?
It's just my opinion that he would attract more star players. That I think more star players want to play with Chris Paul than Blake Griffin, and I think part of being a top 5 player in this league is how many stars would want to play with you.
I agree with that. I just think they both need each other.
Like for instance, I take Durant over Westbrook because I think deep down more stars like Durant personally. And if you're a star and you play with Westbrook, you'll never get the ball. So part of being one of my top 5 players in the NBA is not only can you create offense, can you help create it for others? Are you like Carmelo? Nobody wants to play with Carmelo. They keep telling you they have chances. Nobody wants to play with Carmelo Anthony. Nobody wanted to play with Iverson or Marbury. They want to play with my favorite 5 guys. Anthony Davis, Chris Paul, LeBron, Kevin Durant. Those are guys everybody wants to play with. They can score, but they can get you points too.
Colin Cowherd. Looking good. Well, looking okay.
The Thundering Herd Podcast.
We were talking about this. All the Atlanta Hawk fans, I mean, come on, fans. You guys line up when I'm wrong, but when you're wrong, you go and hide. Where are all the Atlanta Hawk fans? They went on a 19-game winning streak, and I said it's a complete fraud. It's a regular season winning streak in the awful Eastern Conference. I mean, the East is just unwatchable. I watched 5 minutes of the Wizards and Hawks, and I felt sick to my stomach. But you Hawk fans were getting all testy all year when I said all winning streaks are not equal. The Houston Rockets had a winning streak with Tracy McGrady years ago, and I mocked it, and they got beat in the first round. And Atlanta had a 19-game winning streak, and I said, it's the Eastern Conference. You can't win 19 straight in the West. And you got
they beat teams in the West during the streak.
Yes, but when the West, you play more Western teams on a nightly basis. And winning streaks are about the ability to beat teams. Like the Lakers with Wilt Chamberlain and Jerry West in the early 70s had a 33-game winning streak. They had legendary players and were hammering everybody in the league. And the league wasn't as diluted back then, so you played good players every night. The league's more diluted now. The Mets went on a big-time winning streak, and I said, first of all, look at their roster. They have some young arms. You should be excited. But they also are in a division with Washington, and eventually Washington's going to catch fire, and you're going to face them, and you're not going to run through Washington. And right now, Houston had won 10 straight until last night, and they got Evan Gattis in that lineup. He's a bruiser, and they're hitting home runs, but Houston's pitching staff is not a World Series pitching staff. Now, it's better now. The team's better now than they have been in recent years, so enjoy it and have fun. But that winning streak, be careful about winning streaks. They're not all the same. Never forget, Tim Tebow had a 6-game winning streak. A series of ugly, low-scoring, narrow wins due to a great defense and Matt Prater's leg. New England in 2007 won 18 straight, blowing people out. At the time, the AFC was loaded, and they were full of Hall of Fame players. That Denver winning streak with Tebow, I kept saying, they're winning 10-9. Tebow doesn't complete a pass until the 2-minute warning. This is a mirage. Hawaii won 12 straight in 2007. Then they went to the Sugar Bowl and got smoked. Lucas Duda had 30 jacks last year at Citi Field. There's no way he's going to keep hitting 30 jacks, even if they move the walls in Citi Field. That's not a hitter's park. This year he's got 2. It's just he's not, sometimes guys have career years. I remember as a kid growing up, the Seattle Mariners, that 1995 season, 20 years ago. Like sometimes everybody in your staff has a big year. Remember when the Mariners had Ichiro and they won like 116 games? Go back, go look that up real quick. When the Mariners won 116 games, every pitcher on that staff had a career year. They had one legitimate ace and then a bunch of like 4 starters. And I can remember one of the guys was like a Paul Abbott or somebody. Go back to that team, and it's 116 wins. Now, that was the year 2001. Now, go back. I remember my friends in Seattle like, this is going to be an all-timer. And I'm like, look at this staff. Freddie Garcia, Paul Abbott. Yeah, I remember Paul Abbott and John Halama. Paul Abbott won 17 games. Now, go to Paul Abbott's career. Go to Paul Abbott's. And nothing against Paul Abbott. He's probably a wonderful father. What's Paul Abbott's career? Here we go. Here's Paul Abbott's career. Wins 3, 6, 9, 1, 1, 3, 2, 1. 17. Yeah, he won 43 games, 17 in 1 year. And I was telling my friends, it's an outlier. Either the whole team's on HGH. I mean, there were other guys like Brett Boone. Go look at Brett Boone's year that year. Nothing against Brett Boone. He's a 270 hitter with an uppercut swing. Had warning track power. Then suddenly, right in the middle of the steroid era, Brett Boone, go look at his jacks that year.
Sounds like there's plenty against Brett Boone.
There's nothing against Brett Boone.
Sounds like a lot against Brett Boone.
I love Aaron. All right, so what did he hit that year? He had 37 jacks. His career, he's like 12, 7, 19, 20. 37. Yeah, he had 330. He was like an MVP-level player that year. So, and I remember telling my friends at the time, I'm like, Paul Abbott's winning 15, 16, 17 games. This is not going to last. Enjoy this year. So, Atlanta Hawks, come on. Come on. Mets 11, 10-game winning streak. Come on. Eric, you're in the Herd on ESPN Radio. Go ahead.
Hey, Eric from Houston. I think the headline should be reading instead of, the Spurs defeat and the Clippers come out with Chris Paul. I think it's about Harden wearing the billboard on his forehead last night that I'm not the MVP, and I only got 20-something votes for the MVP. And so I really believe that game 1 is going to be Wednesday night, and if he can turn that into fuel.
So you think basically James Harden last night was pouting?
Oh, just devastated, He had to think he was second in the line. He had to have some sense of...
Yeah, I don't know. I think Harden's a one-end-of-the-floor guy. And I think he's a tremendous one-end-of-the-floor guy, and I think he's improved this year on the defensive end. But I've never seen him as an MVP-level player. I think he's an MVP-level scorer. It's like Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony is not a both-ends-of-the-floor player. He's just not. I've been saying that for 10 years. Finally, Knicks fans bought into it. He's just not James Harden improved this year defensively, but he still wasn't elite. And I don't care about the data. He's not an elite defender. He's not. Carmelo's not an elite defender. You just got to come to terms with it. Nothing against James Harden. And I've said this, I would never build my team around James Harden. No way I'm building my team. I think he's a really nice player. But if you put him on Oklahoma City tomorrow, Durant, Westbrook, and Harden, I'd rather have Durant and Westbrook over Harden. He'd be the third best player on that team. If you gave me the Cavs and it was LeBron, Kyrie, and Harden, he's the third best player on that team.
They did play in the team together and went to the NBA Finals.
Yes, and he was the third best player on that team. If you put him on the Cavs right now, Kyrie and LeBron are the first two. James would be, in my opinion, would be the third best player on that team. So there's two teams in the NBA that he could go to tomorrow. He'd be the third best player on those teams. I'd take Westbrook and Durant over James Harden. You wouldn't? Really?
Well, 2 for 1. Yeah, you take the 2.
No, I'm saying if you stack them as who's the best player, Harden's not as good as Durant or Westbrook.
You'd start a team with Westbrook over Harden?
Yes. Yes, I would. You're looking at me like you would take Harden over.
I think it's pretty close.
Don't think it's just close. You think it's close? I don't think it's close.
Is that your Jerry Seinfeld voice?
No.
What is the deal?
What is the deal with these marketing people? Tide gets bloodstains out. Maybe you should worry that you have bloodstains in your shirt. What's the deal?
Check out The Herd with Colin Cowherd weekdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNradio.com, and on ESPNU. The Thundering Herd Podcast. Two of baseball's best go head-to-head in interleague action when the Tigers head to St. Louis to face the Cardinals. That one is gone. The pregame at 7 Eastern, first pitch at 8, Sunday on ESPN and ESPN Radio.